She was supposed to be someone else, a rancher's daughter promised in exchange for peace. But when the Modoc war chief discovered the deception, everything changed. What happened next would blur the lines between captive and chosen, between duty and desire, and transform two enemies into something neither could have predicted. Thank you for watching. The autumn wind of 1872 swept across the volcanic plains of Northern California, carrying with it the scent of sagebrush and distant wood smoke. Olivia Weston stood at the window of the small trading post in Eureka, her green eyes fixed on the rugged landscape that stretched toward the lava beds where the Modoc people made their stronghold. At 24 years old, with chestnut hair that caught the afternoon light and a determined set to her jaw, she had traveled west 3 years ago to help her uncle run his mercantile business after her. Parents died of fever in Ohio. Life on the frontier had hardened her in ways her Eastern upbringing never could have prepared her for. But it had also given her a fierce independence that she guarded carefully. "Miss Weston, you shouldn't stand so close to the window," called Thomas Reed, her uncle's business partner, a nervous man whose anxiety had only increased with the growing tensions between settlers and the Modoc tribe. "The raids have been getting worse. Just last week, the Patterson homestead was burned to the ground." Olivia turned from the window, her expression thoughtful rather than fearful. "And why do you think that is, Mr. Reed? Could it be because the army forced them off their ancestral lands and tried to relocate them to the Klamath Reservation, where they've been mistreated and starved?" Reed's face flushed red. "You sound like a Modoc sympathizer, Miss Weston. That kind of talk could get you into trouble." "I'm not a sympathizer," Olivia replied evenly. "I'm simply someone who believes in understanding all sides of a conflict before passing judgment. The Modoc didn't start this war. We did." Before Reed could respond, the door burst open and Olivia's uncle, George Weston, stumbled in, his face pale and drawn. His clothes were disheveled, and there was a wild look in his eyes that Olivia had never seen before. "Uncle George, what's happened?" Olivia rushed to his side, guiding him to a chair. "Are you hurt?" George shook his head, accepting the glass of water Reed quickly poured. "No, I'm not hurt, but we're in serious trouble, Livy. Serious trouble." He took a long drink, his hands trembling slightly. "I've just come from a meeting with Colonel Rutherford and several other town leaders. The situation with the Modoc has reached a breaking point. The army is planning a major offensive against their stronghold in the lava beds." Olivia knelt beside her uncle's chair, her heart beginning to race. "What does that have to do with us?" George met her eyes, and she saw guilt swimming in their depths. "There might be a way to avoid bloodshed. The Modoc war chief, a man they call Wire, has sent word through an intermediary. He's willing to negotiate." "What kind of negotiation?" Reed asked suspiciously. George's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He wants a bride, a white woman to marry as a gesture of good faith between our peoples. In exchange, he'll agree to relocate his people peacefully and stop the raids." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Olivia felt her blood run cold. "That's barbaric," she said quietly. "You can't just trade a woman like livestock." "It's not like that," George protested weakly. "It would be a willing arrangement. The woman would be treated with honor, given a position of respect, and it could save hundreds of lives on both sides." "Who did they choose?" Olivia asked, though something in her uncle's expression made her stomach twist with premonition. George couldn't meet her eyes. "Catherine Blackwood, James Blackwood's daughter from the ranch north of here. She's agreed to go. They're preparing her now for the exchange tomorrow at dawn." Olivia knew Catherine, a shy girl of 19 with golden hair and a sweet disposition. She was engaged to marry a young farmer named Daniel Morris in the spring. "This will destroy her life," Olivia said, standing abruptly. "How can you all agree to this?" "We don't have a choice," Reed interjected. "It's either one woman's sacrifice or a war that will kill dozens, maybe hundreds. Catherine understands her duty, does she? Or is she simply too terrified to refuse?" Olivia's voice rose with anger. "And what happens when this Wire discovers he's been given a terrified girl who doesn't want to be there? Do you think that will create peace or more resentment?" George stood, placing his hands on Olivia's shoulders. I know this seems wrong, Livy, but sometimes difficult choices must be made for the greater good. Catherine is brave and willing. We should honor her sacrifice, not question it. Olivia pulled away from her uncle, her mind racing. Something about this entire arrangement felt fundamentally wrong, not just morally, but practically. She had heard stories about Wire, the young Modoc war chief who had earned his name, which meant wolf, through his fierce protection of his people and his strategic brilliance in battle. The army considered him their most dangerous adversary, a man who knew the lava beds like the back of his hand and had turned those treacherous volcanic formations into an impenetrable fortress. Would such a man really be satisfied with a frightened girl who had been bartered like goods? That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She lay in her small room above the trading post, listening to the wind rattle the windows and thinking about Catherine Blackwood. At dawn, that girl would be taken to the designated meeting place, handed over to the Modoc, and expected to build a life among people whose language she didn't speak and whose customs were completely foreign to her. It was a recipe for disaster, and Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that this false peace would crumble quickly, leading to even worse violence than before. She thought about her own life, the loneliness she had felt since losing her parents, the sense that she was merely going through the motions of existence without real purpose or passion. Perhaps this was an opportunity disguised as tragedy, a chance to do something meaningful with her life, rather than simply existing in the shadow of other people's expectations. She rose before dawn and dressed quietly in her riding clothes. If she was going to do what she was thinking, she needed to move quickly. Olivia slipped out of the trading post and made her way through the quiet streets of Eureka to the Blackwood Ranch on the outskirts of town. The pre-dawn darkness was thick and heavy, broken only by the occasional lantern light in windows where early risers prepared for the day ahead. Dogs barked as she passed, and once she heard the distant howl of a coyote, a sound that made her shiver despite her warm cloak. She found Catherine in the barn, already dressed in the fine clothes that had been selected for her, sitting on a hay bale and crying softly. The girl looked up when Olivia entered, quickly wiping her tears. "Miss Weston, what are you doing here?" "I came to see if you were truly willing to go through with this," Olivia said gently, sitting beside her. Catherine's lower lip trembled. "I don't have a choice. My father says it's my duty, that people are depending on me. But you don't want to go." It was a statement, not a question. Catherine shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm terrified. I don't know anything about the Modoc. I don't know this man I'm supposed to marry. And Daniel," she choked on a sob, "Daniel will never forgive me. He doesn't understand why I have to do this. He begged me to run away with him, to go to Oregon or Nevada, anywhere but here. But my father said that would make me a coward, that I'd be responsible for every death that followed. How can I live with that weight?" Olivia felt her heart break for the girl. The burden placed on Catherine's young shoulders was unconscionable, a responsibility no one should have to bear alone. She reached out and took Catherine's trembling hand in her own. "What if you didn't have to go?" Catherine looked at her with confusion and hope warring in her expression. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if someone else went in your place? Someone older, more experienced with frontier life, someone who speaks some of the Modoc language from trading with them over the years." Catherine's eyes widened. "You? But Miss Weston, they're expecting me. They've seen me in town." Olivia had thought of that. In the dim light of dawn, with the hood covering your hair and face, how closely will they look? By the time they realize the substitution, it will be too late to turn back without causing the very conflict everyone is trying to avoid. "But why would you do this?" Catherine asked, bewildered. "Why would you sacrifice yourself for me? You have a life here, a business, friends. You could marry any number of men in town who've shown interest in you." Olivia stood and walked to the barn door, looking out at the pre-dawn darkness. "Because I don't believe in forcing young girls into marriages they don't want," she said quietly. "And because someone needs to actually try to make this peace work, rather than just going through the motions." If I go willingly, with some understanding of their culture and language, maybe there's a real chance of building a bridge between our peoples." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "And if I'm being honest, Catherine, I have no real attachments here. My uncle has Mr. Reed to help run the store. I have no family beyond him, no sweetheart waiting for me, no children depending on me. But you have Daniel. You have your whole life ahead of you. Let me do this thing that needs doing, and you go live the life you were meant to live." Catherine rose and grasped Olivia's hand. "Miss Weston, this is incredibly brave. But what if they harm you? What if this war chief is cruel? Then I'll deal with that when it comes," Olivia said with more confidence than she felt. "But I'd rather take that risk myself than watch you be forced into something that will haunt you forever. Now we need to switch clothes quickly before anyone comes looking for you." 20 minutes later, Olivia rode toward the designated meeting place, dressed in Catherine's fine wool dress and cloak, her face hidden beneath a deep hood. Her heart pounded as the sky began to lighten in the east, painting the volcanic landscape in shades of orange and red. The terrain here was unlike anything she had known back east, harsh and beautiful in equal measure, shaped by ancient volcanic forces into a maze of lava tubes, caves, and jagged rock formations. It was easy to see why the Modoc considered this their stronghold, why the army had such difficulty rooting them out. This land was their ally, shaped to their advantage by forces far older than any human conflict. Colonel Rutherford and a small contingent of soldiers waited at the edge of a clearing, along with James Blackwood, who stood rigid with suppressed emotion. "Keep your head down, girl," Blackwood said gruffly as Olivia approached, clearly believing her to be his daughter. "And remember, you're doing this for all of us. Be brave. Make me proud." Olivia nodded silently, not trusting her voice. She dismounted and stood between the soldiers, waiting as the sun crested the horizon. For several long minutes nothing happened. The soldiers shifted nervously, hands never far from their weapons. Colonel Rutherford checked his pocket watch twice, his jaw clenched with tension. Then, like shadows materializing from the landscape itself, a group of Modoc warriors appeared. There were 8 of them, moving with the fluid grace of men completely at home in this harsh terrain. They seemed to emerge from the very rocks themselves, and Olivia understood in that moment why the army feared these warriors so deeply. They weren't just fighters, they were part of this land in a way the settlers could never be. The warrior in the lead sat tall on a paint horse, his long black hair decorated with feathers, and his face marked with paint in patterns Olivia didn't recognize. Even from a distance, she could sense the power and authority he carried. This had to be Wire. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps 30, with strong features that would have been handsome if not for the hard set of his jaw and the war paint that made him look fierce and untamed. His eyes were dark and intense, seeming to miss nothing as they swept over the gathered soldiers. He wore traditional Modoc clothing, buckskin decorated with intricate beadwork, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had never known defeat. He raised his hand in a gesture of peace, and Colonel Rutherford stepped forward. "We've brought the woman as agreed," the colonel called out. "Catherine Blackwood, daughter of James Blackwood. She comes willingly to be your bride and create peace between our peoples." Wire dismounted in one fluid motion and walked toward them, his warriors fanning out behind him but keeping their weapons lowered. His eyes swept over the gathered soldiers before settling on Olivia's hooded figure. He said something in the Modoc language that Olivia partially understood, asking to see her face. His voice was deeper than she had expected, resonant and commanding. Colonel Rutherford gestured impatiently. "Show yourself, girl. Let him see what he's getting." Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she reached up and pushed back her hood, revealing her face to the morning light. She forced herself to meet Wire's gaze directly, determined not to show fear. For a long moment he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to the colonel and spoke in accented but clear English. "This is not Catherine Blackwood." The clearing erupted in confusion. James Blackwood surged forward, getting his first clear look at Olivia. "What treachery is this? Where is my daughter?" Who is this woman? Olivia stepped forward before anyone else could speak. My name is Olivia Weston. I came of my own free will. Catherine Blackwood didn't want to marry a stranger, so I'm taking her place. The arrangement was for a willing bride to create peace. I'm willing. Wya's eyes narrowed as he studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see past her brave facade to the uncertainty beneath. You speak our tongue, he said, switching to Modoc. A little, Olivia replied in the same language, grateful for the hours she had spent learning from Modoc traders who visited her uncle's post. I've traded with your people. I know some of your ways. I've learned your words for peace, for trade, for respect. This is unacceptable, Colonel Rutherford sputtered. The agreement was for Catherine Blackwood specifically. We can't just substitute someone else like we're trading horses. Why not? Olivia challenged, her voice steady despite her racing heart. You wanted a white woman to marry your war chief. I'm a white woman and I'm here willingly. Isn't that what matters? Or was this never really about peace at all, but about humiliating the Modoc by forcing them to accept whatever scraps we throw them? Wya held up his hand for silence, his attention fixed entirely on Olivia. Why do you do this? Sacrifice yourself for another. Because forcing someone into marriage against their will is wrong, Olivia said, meeting his intense gaze without flinching. If peace between our peoples depends on a marriage, then let it be with someone who chooses it freely and might actually have a chance of making it work. Catherine Blackwood would have come here terrified and resentful, counting the days until she could escape. I'm here because I believe peace is possible, and I'm willing to try to build it. The war chief circled her slowly, like a predator assessing potential prey. His presence was overwhelming, radiating strength and danger, but also intelligence. She could feel his eyes taking in every detail, measuring her worth, her sincerity, her strength. When he spoke again, it was in English so everyone could understand. You are brave or foolish, perhaps both. But you are not the woman promised. This changes our agreement. Colonel Rutherford's hand moved toward his weapon. Then there's no deal. We'll resolve this matter militarily as planned. Wait, Olivia said urgently, turning to Wya. You wanted a bride to show good faith between our peoples, to prove that peace is possible. I can do that. I know your language and respect your culture. I came here freely when I could have stayed safe in town. Isn't that worth more than a terrified girl who was forced to come? Wya's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in his dark eyes, something that might have been respect or might have been curiosity. She makes a point, he said finally, still studying Olivia. I'm not the girl you were sent for, Olivia whispered, taking a step toward him. But I might be the one you need. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither fully understood yet. Wya turned to his warriors and spoke rapidly in Modoc. They responded with obvious surprise and some protest, but he silenced them with a sharp gesture. One warrior in particular, older than the others, with grey streaking his long hair, seemed especially opposed, speaking urgently and gesturing toward Olivia with clear distrust. But Wya's word was clearly final. He faced the colonel again. I accept this substitution. She comes with me now. Rutherford looked torn between relief and uncertainty. Once she leaves with you, she's under your protection. Any harm that comes to her will break this peace. We'll be watching. She will be treated as my promised wife, with all the honor that position deserves, Wya said formally. No harm will come to her from my people. This I swear before these witnesses. He turned to Olivia and extended his hand. Come, Olivia Weston, who speaks our tongue. Your old life ends here. Olivia took his hand, feeling the calloused strength in his grip. His hand was warm and rough from years of hard living, from drawing bowstrings and gripping weapons and building fires. It was the hand of a warrior, but there was no cruelty in how he held hers, only certainty. She turned back for one last look at the soldiers and James Blackwood's bewildered face. Tell my uncle I'm sorry for the worry I'll cause him, she said. But tell him I did what I thought was right. Tell him I'm not a prisoner. I'm choosing this. Then she allowed Wya to lift her onto his horse, settling behind him as the Modoc warriors mounted their own horses. As they rode away from the clearing toward the distant lava beds, Olivia felt the weight of what she had done settle over her. She had traded her entire life, everything familiar and safe, for an uncertain future among people most settlers considered enemies. But as the morning sun warmed her face and she felt the solid strength of Wya's back against her, she didn't regret her choice. Whatever came next, at least it would be on her own terms. The journey into the lava beds was unlike anything Olivia had experienced in her 3 years on the frontier. The landscape shifted from rolling plains to increasingly hostile terrain, jagged volcanic rock formations rising from the earth like the bones of some ancient beast. The Modoc warriors navigated this treacherous ground with practiced ease, their horses picking careful paths through narrow passages that Olivia would never have noticed on her own. She clung to Wya's waist as the paint horse climbed steep inclines and descended into shadowy ravines where the temperature dropped noticeably. No one spoke during the ride, and the silence was broken only by the sound of hooves against stone and the occasional cry of a hawk circling overhead. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 90 minutes, they entered a hidden canyon that opened suddenly from what had appeared to be a solid rock wall. Olivia gasped despite herself at the sight before her. The Modoc encampment was far larger than she had imagined, with dozens of traditional tule mat lodges clustered near a spring-fed stream. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and she could see women working on hides, children playing near the water, and elders sitting in the shade of makeshift shelters. This wasn't just a war camp. This was a community, a people trying to maintain their way of life in the face of overwhelming pressure from settlers and soldiers. As they rode into the camp, activity ceased. Every face turned toward them, and Olivia felt the weight of countless eyes assessing her. Wya dismounted and reached up to help her down, his hands firm on her waist as he lifted her from the horse. She stood uncertainly, very aware of how her fine dress and pale skin marked her as an outsider. A murmur ran through the gathered crowd, and Olivia caught fragments of conversation in Modoc. Some voices sounded curious, others hostile, and a few distinctly angry. An elderly woman pushed through the crowd, her weathered face set in hard lines. She spoke rapidly to Wya, her tone sharp and accusatory. Olivia understood enough to know the woman was questioning why he had brought a white woman here, whether he had lost his mind, whether he understood the danger this posed to their people. Wya responded calmly but firmly, his voice carrying the authority that made others fall silent. The old warrior who had protested at the exchange also dismounted and approached, adding his voice to the woman's concerns. His name, Olivia would learn later, was Nanook, and he had been Wya's mentor since childhood. He spoke of broken treaties and murdered children, of diseases brought by white settlers that had decimated their numbers, of land stolen and promises shattered. How could they trust any white woman, especially one who came through deception? Wya listened respectfully, then responded in a voice loud enough for the entire camp to hear. Olivia caught most of his words. He spoke of the alternative to this arrangement, the army attack that would come with overwhelming force. He spoke of protecting their children, their elders, their way of life. And he spoke of this woman who had chosen to come, who had not been the coward promised but someone brave enough to take another's place. A younger woman stepped forward, her face strikingly beautiful despite the suspicion in her dark eyes. She wore her hair in 2 long braids decorated with beads, and her buckskin dress was intricately embroidered. She spoke to Wya in a possessive tone that needed no translation, and Olivia felt her stomach tighten as she realized this woman had expected to be Wya's chosen bride. The woman's name was Kiona, and her jealousy was palpable as she looked Olivia up and down with obvious disdain. She said something that made several people laugh, and though Olivia didn't catch all the words, she understood it was an insult about her pale skin and soft hands. Wya's response was sharp, cutting off the laughter immediately. He gestured for Olivia to follow him, and she walked through the parting crowd with her head held high, refusing to show the fear churning in her stomach. He led her to a lodge set slightly apart from the others, larger than most, but not ostentatious. He held back the entrance flap and motioned for her to enter. Inside, the space was surprisingly comfortable. Woven mats covered the floor, and various belongings were organized neatly along the walls. A fire pit in the center had stones arranged around it for sitting, and bundles of dried herbs hung from the support poles, filling the air with a pleasant, earthy scent. Olivia stood uncertainly in the center of the lodge, suddenly very aware that she was alone with this man who was supposed to become her husband. Wyatt regarded her steadily, his expression unreadable. "You understand more of our language than you admitted at the exchange," he said in Modoc. "I heard you react to Kiona's insult before it was fully spoken." Olivia met his gaze. "I understand enough to know that many of your people don't want me here, that they think you've made a mistake." "Perhaps they're right." "Perhaps," Wyatt agreed, surprising her. "Time will tell." He moved to a storage basket and pulled out a bundle of clothing. "You cannot wear that dress here. It marks you as enemy. You will dress as Modoc women dress." He held out the bundle. "There is a place behind the lodge where you can change. The women's bathing area is downstream from the camp. Michaela will show you." "Michaela, the elder who spoke against me when we arrived? She is my mother's sister. She does not trust you, but she will not harm you. She believes in hospitality, even to enemies." "Am I your enemy?" Olivia asked quietly. Wyatt was silent for a long moment. "I don't know yet what you are, Olivia Weston. But you are here, and you are under my protection. That is enough for now." Olivia took the bundle of clothing, her fingers brushing against his briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she quickly pulled away. "What happens now?" "Now you learn our ways," he said. "You learn to be Modoc, or you remain forever an outsider. The choice is yours." He paused at the entrance. "The marriage ceremony will be in 7 days. That gives you time to decide if you can truly commit to this path, and it gives my people time to accept your presence. But understand this, once we are married, there is no going back. You will be Modoc. Your old life will be finished." "I understand," Olivia said, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. Wyatt nodded and left, calling out for Michaela as he went. Moments later, the elderly woman entered, her expression still hard, but no longer quite so hostile. She looked Olivia up and down, then gestured impatiently toward the bundle of clothing. "You change now," Michaela said in heavily accented English. "Then I show you camp. You work like other women. No special treatment because you white or because Wyatt brings you." Olivia changed behind the lodge into the buckskin dress and leggings, her fingers clumsy with the unfamiliar fastenings. The clothing was comfortable once she had it on, softer than she had expected, and decorated with simple but beautiful beadwork. When she emerged, Michaela circled her once, making small adjustments to how the dress hung, then grunted what might have been approval. "Come," she said, and began walking without checking to see if Olivia followed. The tour of the camp was brief and practical. Michaela pointed out the communal cooking areas, the food storage, the area where hides were processed, the place where weapons were made and repaired. Everywhere they went, people stared. Some faces showed curiosity, others suspicion or outright hostility. Children followed at a distance, whispering and giggling until their mothers called them back. "This is women's work area," Michaela said, gesturing to a space where several women sat scraping hides and sewing. "You will work here tomorrow. Learn our ways." Her tone suggested she expected Olivia to fail. That evening, as the sun set and cooking fires were lit throughout the camp, Olivia sat outside Wyatt's lodge, uncertain of where she was supposed to be or what she was supposed to do. Women were preparing the evening meal, their movements efficient and coordinated in a way that spoke of years of practice. Children played nearby, their laughter a reminder that despite the hardships these people faced, they still found joy. Olivia felt utterly alone, an intruder in a world she barely understood. A small girl, perhaps 5 years old, approached cautiously. She stared at Olivia with wide, curious eyes, then reached out to touch her chestnut hair, which was so different from the black hair of the Modoc people. "Pretty," the child said in Modoc, her fingers gentle as they explored the unfamiliar texture. "What is your name?" Olivia asked in the same language. The child's eyes widened in surprise that Olivia could speak her tongue. "Amma," she replied. "It means dawn." "That's a beautiful name," Olivia said with a smile. "I'm Olivia." The child tried to pronounce it, stumbled, then laughed. "Too hard," she declared. "I call you Dawn Hair, because it is the color of the sky when the sun rises." Before Olivia could respond, a woman hurried over and pulled Amma away, scolding her in rapid Modoc for bothering the stranger. The woman's fear was evident, as if Olivia might somehow contaminate her daughter. Olivia felt the sting of rejection, but understood it. These people had every reason to distrust white settlers. Wire appeared, carrying 2 wooden bowls filled with stew. He sat beside her and handed her one. "Emma likes you," he observed. "Children see more clearly than adults sometimes. They haven't learned to hate yet. Is that what you think your people feel toward me?" "Hate some, yes," Wire said honestly. "Others are simply afraid. Afraid I'm a spy, a threat? Afraid of change," he corrected. "Afraid that accepting you means accepting that our old ways are ending, that we cannot fight anymore, cannot win. You carry the weight of that acceptance just by being here." Olivia absorbed this, understanding the impossible position she had put herself in. "And you, what do you feel?" Wire was quiet for a long time, staring into his bowl. "I feel the weight of every decision I make for my people. I feel anger at what has been taken from us. And I feel something I did not expect when I agreed to this arrangement." "What?" she asked softly. "Curiosity," he said, meeting her eyes. "You are not what I expected, Olivia Weston. You speak our tongue with a trader's accent. You do not cringe or weep. You look people in the eye even when they wish you harm. This is unusual for white women I have encountered. Where did you learn this strength?" "My mother," Olivia said. "She died when I was 21. But she taught me that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. She came west with my father when everyone said it was too dangerous, that a woman couldn't survive out here. She proved them wrong. And then she died anyway," Wire said, not unkindly. "Yes," Olivia admitted. "Fever took her in 3 days. My father was never the same after. He tried to keep going, to keep the farm running, but his heart wasn't in it. When my uncle wrote asking for help with his trading post, my father saw it as a chance to start over. We came to California, and for a while things were better." "What happened to your father?" Wire asked. Olivia felt her throat tighten. "He was killed on the road to Austin, murdered by raiders. Or so I was told. I never saw his body, never got to bury him properly. One day he left for supplies, and he never came back." Wire set down his bowl. "I'm sorry. To lose both parents is a heavy burden. We have this in common," Olivia realized. "Loss. You've lost people too." "My wife," Wire said quietly, "and our infant son, 3 winters ago during a raid by settlers. They burned our village on the Klamath Reservation. Many died." Olivia felt her heart clench. "I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean much, but I am truly sorry." "Words matter little in the face of such loss," Wire agreed. "But actions matter. That is why I agreed to this arrangement. Not because I wanted a white wife, but because I want my people to survive. If marriage to an enemy can buy us peace, buy us time to find a new way to live, then it is a price worth paying." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "And now you're stuck with the wrong woman," Olivia said. "Are you?" Wire turned to face her fully. "The wrong woman would have come here weeping and terrified, unable to function. The wrong woman would have required constant protection and given nothing in return. You came here by choice, knowing it might mean your death. You speak our language and show respect for our ways. Perhaps the spirits sent you instead of Catherine Blackwood for a reason." "Do you believe in spirits?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. "I believe in forces larger than ourselves," Wire said. "I believe that sometimes the path we walk is not the one we planned, but it is the one we need. He stood and held out his hand to help her up. "Come, I will show you something." They walked through the darkening camp to the far edge where the canyon wall rose dramatically. Wire led her up a narrow trail that climbed steeply, testing Olivia's balance in the growing darkness. At the top, they emerged onto a flat outcropping that overlooked the entire hidden valley. The camp below was lit by cooking fires, creating a constellation of warm light against the gathering dark. Above, stars were beginning to appear in a sky that seemed impossibly vast. "This is where I come to think," Wire said. "To remember why we fight, what we fight for. Not for land or pride, but for this. For the right to live as our ancestors lived, to raise our children in our ways, to be free." Olivia gazed out at the view, understanding flooding through her. This wasn't about hatred or violence. This was about survival, about a people desperately trying to hold on to their identity in the face of forces determined to erase them. "I can't undo what my people have done to yours," she said quietly. "I can't bring back those you've lost or return what was stolen. But I can try to build something new. A bridge, maybe, between our worlds. Bridges can be crossed from both directions," Wire observed. "They can bring understanding, or they can bring invasion. How do I know you won't lead soldiers here once you learn our secrets?" "Because I gave my word," Olivia said, turning to face him. "And because I'm beginning to understand that the real enemies aren't the Modoc or the settlers. The real enemies are fear and ignorance and the refusal to see each other as human." Wire studied her face in the starlight. "You speak like someone who has thought deeply about these things." "I'm a trader's niece," Olivia said with a slight smile. "I've spent 3 years watching people from different worlds try to communicate, try to understand each other. Sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they fail catastrophically. I've seen both. And which do you think we will be? Success or catastrophe?" "I think," Olivia said slowly, "that depends on both of us. On whether we're willing to try, really try, to understand each other." They stood in silence for a while, looking out over the camp. Finally, Wire spoke again. "The marriage ceremony in 7 days will bind us permanently by Modoc law. There will be no dissolving it, no returning to your old life. If you have doubts, speak them now." "I have doubts," Olivia admitted. "I'd be a fool not to. But I also have conviction. I believe peace is possible. I believe understanding is possible. And I believe that sometimes the hardest paths are the ones most worth walking." Wire nodded slowly. "Then we will walk this path together and see where it leads." They descended the trail in companionable silence. When they reached Wire's lodge, he paused at the entrance. "You will sleep here. I will sleep with the unmarried warriors until the ceremony. It would not be proper otherwise. Mythical will bring you blankets and whatever else you need." "Thank you," Olivia said, then hesitated. "Wire, why did you really accept the substitution today?" "You could have refused," demanded Catherine Blackwood as promised. "Because you were brave," he said simply. "And because in your eyes, I saw someone who might actually try to make this work, rather than simply endure it. That is rare, Olivia Weston. That is worth more than any arrangement made by frightened men trying to avoid war." He turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. Fiona will try to make your life difficult. She expected to be my wife, has expected it since we were children. My refusal to marry her, choosing instead this arrangement with the whites, shamed her before the tribe. Be careful around her." "I will," Olivia promised. Alone in the lodge, she wrapped herself in the blankets Mythical had grudgingly provided and lay staring up at the smoke hole in the ceiling where stars glittered. She had done something irreversible today, stepped across a threshold that could never be uncrossed. In 7 days, she would marry a man she barely knew, a war chief of a people most of her world considered savages. But as she drifted towards sleep, her last thought was not of fear or regret. It was of the way Wire had looked at her on that overlook, with something that might have been respect, might have been the first fragile thread of connection. It was a beginning, uncertain and fraught with danger, but a beginning nonetheless. And sometimes beginnings were enough. The next morning arrived with the sound of camp activity and the smell of cooking fires. Olivia woke disoriented, forgetting for a moment where she was. Then reality crashed back. The Modoc camp, her impossible bargain. The 7 days until her marriage to Wire. She dressed quickly in the buckskin clothing, braided her hair as best she could, in imitation of how she had seen other women wear theirs, and emerged from the lodge into the cool morning air. Mythical was waiting for her, arms crossed and expression stern. "You work today," she announced. "No time for soft white woman weakness." "I'm ready," Olivia said, straightening her spine. "Good. We start with water. You carry from stream to camp. Fill all containers." It was a test, Olivia realized. A way to see if she would complain, if she would prove herself as soft and useless as they expected. She took the carrying yoke Mythical held out and followed her to the stream. The work was backbreaking. The water containers were heavy, and the path from the stream to the camp was steep and rocky. By her 4th trip, Olivia's shoulders ached and her hands were blistered from gripping the yoke. But she didn't complain, didn't stop except when Mythical grudgingly allowed brief rests. Some of the women watched her work with undisguised curiosity. Others pointedly ignored her. Kiona made a point of walking past carrying her own water with effortless grace, making a comment in Modoc that Olivia only partially understood but knew was mocking. Olivia bit her tongue and kept working. By midday, she had carried enough water to satisfy even Mythical's demanding standards. The old woman examined Olivia's blistered hands with something that might have been approval. "You are stronger than you look," she admitted grudgingly. "Tomorrow you learn to prepare hides. Today you rest and eat." Olivia was grateful for the respite. She sat in the shade of a large rock formation, eating the simple meal Mythical had provided and watching the life of the camp unfold around her. She saw mothers teaching daughters to weave baskets, fathers showing sons how to fletch arrows, elders sitting in the shade telling stories that made the children laugh. It was so different from the settlement life she knew, but in many ways it was the same. People trying to survive, to raise their children, to find joy in small moments, despite the hardships they faced. Ima, the little girl from yesterday, appeared again, this time with 2 friends. They stood a respectful distance away, whispering and giggling. Olivia smiled at them and gestured for them to come closer. Slowly, cautiously they approached. "Do you want to hear a story?" Olivia asked in Modoc. The children's eyes lit up and they nodded eagerly. Olivia told them a tale her mother used to tell her, adapting it as best she could to the Modoc language she knew. By the time she finished, a small crowd had gathered, including several adults who tried to look as though they weren't listening. The story was about a wolf who learned to trust a raven, and together they survived a harsh winter that neither could have endured alone. It was not subtle in its message, but the children didn't care about that. They only cared that it was exciting, and that the storyteller had a funny accent that made some of the words sound strange. When Olivia finished, Amma clapped her hands. "Another," she demanded, but her mother called her away, though Olivia noticed the woman's expression was less hostile than before. Small victories, Olivia thought. That was how trust would be built. One small interaction at a time, one story, one shared meal, one moment of connection. It would take time, perhaps more time than 7 days, but she was committed now. There was no turning back. The 3rd day in the Modoc camp brought an unexpected challenge. Olivia woke before dawn, to the sound of urgent voices and rapid movement outside the lodge. She emerged to find warriors preparing for departure, checking weapons and securing supplies to their horses with practiced efficiency. The atmosphere was tense, electric with anticipation, and barely contained aggression. Waya stood near the center of activity, speaking in low tones with Nanook and several other senior warriors. When he noticed Olivia, he broke away from the group and approached her, his expression grave. "There has been an incident," he said without preamble. "White ranchers attacked a Modoc hunting party yesterday evening near the northern boundary. 2 of our young men are dead, 3 more injured. The survivors say the attack was unprovoked, that they were on land we were promised could still use for hunting." Olivia felt her stomach drop. This is exactly what everyone feared, that the peace wouldn't hold. Waya's jaw tightened. We ride to retrieve our dead and bring back the wounded. We will not attack the ranch, not yet, but we will make our presence known. We will remind them that we are still here, still strong. How long will you be gone? Until it is done, he said. Perhaps 2 days, perhaps more. He hesitated, then added, Michaela will watch over you while I'm away, but be careful. Some in the camp blame you for this. They say the spirits are angry that I agreed to marry a white woman, that this attack is punishment for my choice. That's not rational, Olivia protested. How could my presence cause ranchers to attack your hunters? It is not about what is rational, Wire replied. It is about fear and grief and the need to blame someone. Just stay close to the lodge and do not go anywhere alone. He turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at her. The ceremony is in 4 days. When I return, we will talk more about what that means, about what will be expected of you as my wife. Be thinking about whether you can truly accept this life. Then he was gone, mounting his paint horse and leading a group of 20 warriors out of the canyon in the grey pre-dawn light. Olivia stood watching until they disappeared from view, a knot of anxiety forming in her chest. She had known intellectually that violence could erupt at any moment, but experiencing it was different. This was the reality of the world she had chosen to enter, a world where death and conflict were never far away. Mythical appeared at her elbow, making Olivia jump. You see now why we do not trust your people, the old woman said. They promise peace, then murder our young men. They promise land for hunting, then shoot anyone who dares to use it. This is the way it has always been. Not all white people are like that, Olivia said quietly. Some of us want real peace, real justice. Michaela snorted. Words are cheap. Actions are what matter. Your people's actions speak very clearly. She thrust a basket at Olivia. Come, today you learn to gather plants for medicine and food. At least, if you are to be Modoc wife, you should know how to be useful. The morning was spent outside the canyon, traveling through areas Olivia never would have found on her own. Michaela moved through the landscape with an intimate knowledge that came from a lifetime of observation, pointing out plants that looked identical to Olivia's untrained eye, but had vastly different properties. This one stops bleeding, Michaela explained, carefully harvesting leaves from a low-growing plant. This one makes tea for fever. This one you never touch, only look at. It will make you very sick, make your skin burn like fire. Olivia committed everything to memory, asking questions when she didn't understand. Despite her initial hostility, Michaela seemed to warm slightly when she realized Olivia was genuinely trying to learn. The old woman had spent her life as a healer, and perhaps any student, even a white one, was better than no student at all. They were returning to camp, baskets full of gathered plants, when they heard shouting ahead. Michaela's expression turned grim. Trouble, she muttered, quickening her pace. They emerged into the camp to find a group of women surrounding Kiona, who held a torn piece of cloth that Olivia recognized with a sinking heart. It was from the dress she had worn when she arrived, the fine wool dress that had belonged to Catherine Blackwood. Kiona was holding it up triumphantly, speaking rapidly to the gathered crowd. Olivia caught enough of the words to understand. Kiona was saying she had found the dress hidden in Wire's lodge, that it proved Olivia was a spy who had concealed her true identity, that the fancy dress showed she was wealthy and important among the whites, probably the daughter of a military officer or government official sent to infiltrate the Modoc and learn their secrets. It was absurd, but Olivia could see some of the women nodding, wanting to believe it. Michaela stepped forward and spoke sharply, defending Olivia, explaining that many white women owned such dresses and that it meant nothing. But Kiona was not to be deterred. She switched to English, addressing Olivia directly. You come here with lies, she spat. Say you are simple trader's niece, but this dress cost more than trader makes in a year. Who are you really? What is your true purpose here? I told you the truth, Olivia said, keeping her voice steady. I'm exactly who I said I am. That dress belonged to Catherine Blackwood. I wore it because I was pretending to be her during the exchange. Kiona's eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. So you admit you are a deceiver? You admit you came here wearing another woman's identity, another woman's clothes. If you lie about this, what else do you lie about? The logic was twisted but effective. Olivia could see doubt spreading through the watching women. Even those who had begun to warm to her were now uncertain, suspicious. Before Olivia could respond, a young warrior burst into the camp, his horse lathered with sweat. He shouted news that drove all thoughts of Olivia's dress from everyone's mind. The army was coming. A large patrol, perhaps 50 soldiers, was less than a day's ride away and heading in the direction of the hidden canyon. Chaos erupted. Women began frantically gathering essential belongings, preparing to evacuate if necessary. The few warriors who had remained to guard the camp armed themselves and sent runners to find Waya and bring him back. Children were pulled close by anxious mothers, and elders were helped to secure positions where they could move quickly if needed. In the midst of the turmoil, Olivia stood frozen. This was because of her. It had to be. Somehow the army had tracked her here, or perhaps someone in Eureka had talked, revealed the general location of the Modoc stronghold. She had brought destruction to these people just by being here. Mythical grabbed her arm roughly. "Come, you foolish girl. You think the army will save you? They shoot first and ask questions later. You look Modoc now in those clothes. They will kill you same as us." "But I could tell them," Olivia started. "Tell them not to attack. Explain that I'm here willingly. You think they care?" Mythical cut her off. "You think soldiers who come to kill savages will listen to white woman who chose to live with savages? You are traitor to them now, same as enemy, maybe worse." She pulled Olivia toward a group of women who were packing emergency supplies. "You help here. Make yourself useful. If we must run, you carry supplies like everyone else." Olivia worked mechanically, her mind racing. Everything she had tried to build over the past 3 days was crumbling. The fragile acceptance she had begun to earn was destroyed by Kiona's accusations and now by the approaching army. These people would never trust her now, would always see her as the harbinger of destruction. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps her idealistic notion of building bridges between worlds had been naive from the start. By late afternoon, scouts reported that the army patrol had changed direction, moving away from the canyon rather than toward it. The collective sigh of relief was palpable, but the damage was done. The camp remained on high alert, and the looks Olivia received were now uniformly hostile. Even Amma's mother kept the little girl away when she tried to approach Olivia. That evening, Olivia sat alone outside Waya's lodge, more isolated than she had been on her first day. No one would sit near her, no one would speak to her. She was a pariah, the dangerous outsider whose presence threatened them all. She wondered if Waya would even go through with the marriage now, or if he would use this as an excuse to send her back. Perhaps that would be for the best. Perhaps she had been a fool to think she could make a difference. Waya and his warriors returned 2 hours after sunset, bringing with them the bodies of the slain hunters wrapped in blankets and the wounded on travois pulled by horses. The camp's attention immediately shifted to grief and care for the injured. Olivia watched from a distance as families mourned their dead, as healers worked frantically to save those who still lived. She felt utterly helpless, unable to offer comfort or assistance, marked by her white skin as belonging to the same people who had caused this suffering. One of the wounded was a boy no more than 16, and his screams of pain cut through the night air. Olivia had some medical knowledge from helping her mother care for sick neighbors back in Ohio, but she didn't dare approach. Then Mythical appeared beside her, breathing hard from exertion. "The boy is dying." Arrow went through his belly. "Nothing I do helps the pain. You say your mother was healer. You know white medicine. Come." Olivia followed without hesitation, pushing through the hostile crowd to where the boy lay on a blanket near a fire. His abdomen was grotesquely swollen, and his skin had taken on a greyish pallor that Olivia recognized with dread. The wound was infected, poison spreading through his body. Even with a proper doctor and medicine, his chances would be slim. Here, in the field with limited supplies, they were essentially non-existent. She knelt beside him anyway, taking his hand. The boy's eyes focused on her face, and she saw his fear. "I'm going to help you," she said softly in Modoc. "I promise the pain will get better." To Michaela, she said, "Do you have anything that can help him sleep? Ease his suffering?" Michaela nodded and hurried away, returning with a tea made from plants Olivia didn't recognize. Together they got the boy to drink it. Within minutes his screams subsided to whimpers, then to quiet breathing. Olivia stayed with him, holding his hand and speaking softly, telling him stories about brave warriors and peaceful hunting grounds beyond the stars. The boy died just before midnight, slipping away quietly with Olivia still holding his hand. His mother, who had been sitting on the other side of him, looked up at Olivia with tears streaming down her face. She said something in Modoc that Olivia didn't catch, but Michaela translated softly. "She thanks you for giving him peace at the end, for not leaving him to die alone in pain." Olivia felt tears burning in her own eyes. "I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for everything my people have done to yours." The woman reached across her dead son's body and grasped Olivia's hand briefly, a moment of shared grief transcending the divide between their worlds. Then she gathered her son's body into her arms and began to keen a high wailing sound that expressed unfathomable sorrow. Other voices joined hers, and soon the entire camp was united in mourning. Olivia stumbled away from the scene, overwhelmed by emotion and exhaustion. She found herself at the edge of the camp, staring out into the darkness and trying not to collapse under the weight of everything she had witnessed. Wyatt found her there an hour later. "I heard what you did for Standing Elk," he said quietly. "That you stayed with him, gave him comfort at the end." Olivia wiped at her eyes. "It wasn't enough. I couldn't save him." "No one could save him," Wyatt said. "The wound was mortal from the start, but you gave him something perhaps more valuable than life, a peaceful death. His mother will remember that." They stood in silence for a while before Wyatt spoke again. "Kiona has been spreading poison about you, saying you brought bad medicine to our camp, that the spirits are angry." Olivia nodded. "I know, and maybe she's right. Maybe my being here has caused more harm than good." Wyatt turned to face her fully. "Do you know how Standing Elk was killed?" Olivia shook her head. "He and the others were hunting deer on land that the treaties say we can still use. They were doing nothing wrong, harming no one. White ranchers saw them and opened fire without warning, without question. Shot them down like animals. Standing Elk's crime was existing, being Modoc on land his ancestors had walked for generations. His death is not your fault, Olivia Weston. His death is the fault of men who see us as less than human. But your presence here didn't cause it, and your absence wouldn't have prevented it." Olivia wanted to believe him, but doubt still gnawed at her. "What about the army patrol? They were heading this direction. What if someone followed me? What if I led them here?" "The patrol was routine," Wyatt interrupted. "They patrol this area regularly, have for months. Our scouts confirmed they had no special knowledge, no sense of our exact location. This was coincidence, nothing more." He paused, then added, "But I understand why my people are afraid, why they look for someone to blame. Fear makes us irrational, makes us see enemies where there are none, and miss the real threats standing right before us." "Is that what I am to you?" Olivia asked. "An irrational fear or a real threat?" Wyatt considered the question seriously. 3 days ago, I would have said I didn't know. But I have watched you. I've seen you carry water until your hands bleed and never complain. I've seen you learn our language and our ways with real dedication, not false pretense. And tonight, I heard how you stayed with a dying boy you had never met and gave him peace in his final moments. These are not the actions of a spy or an enemy. These are the actions of someone with true honor. Olivia felt something loosen in her chest, a tightness she hadn't realized was there. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for believing in me when your people don't. Some of my people do believe in you," Wyatt corrected. "Michaela spoke in your defense tonight, told the council how hard you work and how much you try to learn. Standing Elk's mother spoke of your kindness to her son. Even Nanook, who trusts no white person, admitted you showed courage staying with the boy when you could have hidden away. You are making progress, Olivia. Slowly, but you are making progress." "And Kiona? What about her accusations?" Wyatt's expression hardened. "Kiona is jealous and hurt. She will accept our marriage in time or she will not. Either way, she will not be allowed to harm you or spread lies about you." I've made this clear. The marriage, Olivia said. It's still happening. Despite everything, why would it not happen? Wire asked. You have shown yourself to be exactly who you claim to be. Someone seeking real peace, willing to work for it. The ceremony will proceed in 3 days as planned. Unless you have changed your mind. No, Olivia said with more certainty than she had felt in days. I haven't changed my mind. I chose this path and I will walk it. Wire nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Good, then you should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. We hold the funeral rites for Standing Elk and the other hunter. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story. You should attend. Show respect for our dead. Won't that make things worse? My presence at such a sacred ceremony? Your absence would be worse, Wire said. It would suggest you don't care, that you see our dead as less important than white dead. Attend, stand with the women, mourn with us. Show my people that you see their humanity, even if they struggle to see yours. The next morning, the entire camp gathered for the funeral rites. The bodies of Standing Elk and the other fallen hunter, a young man named Swift River, were prepared with great care, dressed in their finest clothing and decorated with symbols of their achievements. Their families stood close, supported by the community in their grief. Olivia stood at the back with the other women, her head bowed respectfully. The ceremony was conducted by an elderly shaman whose voice carried across the gathering as he spoke of the warriors' bravery, their love for their people, their journeys to the land beyond death, where they would hunt forever in peace. When it came time to place the bodies in their final resting places, high in the rocks where they would be close to the sky, Olivia found herself crying along with everyone else. These were not abstract casualties of war. They were real people with families who loved them, with futures that would never be realized, with dreams that died with them. After the bodies were secured and the formal ceremony concluded, the camp engaged in a ritual Wire had told her about, but she had never witnessed. The warriors, those who had seen battle and lost companions, cut their arms and let their blood fall onto the ground as an offering to the spirits, a promise that the deaths would be avenged, that their fallen brothers would not be forgotten. It was primal and fierce and terrifying, but also deeply moving. These people honored their dead with blood and tears and unbreakable bonds of loyalty. As the ritual concluded and people began to disperse, Standing Elk's mother approached Olivia. The older woman's face was ravaged by grief, but her eyes were clear. She spoke in Modoc, and this time Olivia understood every word. My son died, knowing kindness from someone he should have seen as enemy. This is a gift I will not forget. You have honored him, and you have honored me. Thank you. Olivia bowed her head, too moved to speak. The woman touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture of acceptance, then moved away to be with her family. Mythical appeared at Olivia's side. You did well today, she said gruffly, showed proper respect. Some of the women are talking, saying maybe Wire was right to choose you, that you have good spirit, even if your skin is wrong color. It was the closest thing to approval Olivia had received from Mythical, and she treasured it. Thank you for defending me last night. For speaking to the council. Mythical shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. I speak truth. You work hard, you try to learn, you show respect. These things matter. Kiona is beautiful and Modoc, but she is also selfish and cruel. Better for Wire to have wife with good heart, even if that wife has white skin. The rest of the day passed quietly as the camp recovered from the emotional weight of the funeral. Olivia spent the time with a group of women who were preparing food for the communal meal, and for the first time they included her in their conversation. It was cautious, superficial talk about cooking and weather and children, but it was inclusion nonetheless. She learned names, heard stories, began to see these women not as a monolithic group, but as individuals with distinct personalities and concerns. That evening, Wire sought her out again. Walk with me, he said, and she followed him to the overlook where they had stood on her first night. The sunset was spectacular, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed to set the volcanic landscape ablaze. In 3 days we marry, Wire said without preamble. There are things you should know about what that means, about what will be expected. Olivia braced herself. I'm listening. By Modoc law, you will be my wife in all ways, he began. You will share my lodge, my life, my responsibilities to the tribe. You will be expected to work alongside the other women, to contribute to the community, to bear children, if the spirits allow it. He paused, watching her face carefully. But I will not force myself on you. Our marriage bed will be yours to choose when you are ready. This is not our way to take unwilling women, no matter what you may have heard. Olivia felt relief wash over her. I appreciate that. I know this marriage is political, strategic. I don't expect love or romance. But I hope we can build respect and perhaps friendship. Friendship, Wire repeated as if testing the word. This is possible. You are not what I expected, Olivia Weston. You are stronger and braver than I thought any white woman could be. And you, Olivia said carefully, are not what I expected either. I thought you would be harsh, cruel perhaps. But you've shown me honor and patience. We are both learning to see past what we expected to what actually is, Wire observed. This is good. This is how bridges are built, as you said on that first night. He turned to face her fully. I want you to know something. I did not choose this arrangement lightly. I fought against it in council, argued that we should not bargain with our enemies. But the elders convinced me that our people need peace, need time to recover and rebuild. So I agreed, expecting a burden, a duty to be endured. But you have not been a burden. You have been, he seemed to search for the right word, a surprise. A good surprise, Olivia asked with a slight smile. Wire's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. Time will tell, but so far, yes, a good surprise. They remained on the overlook until the stars emerged, talking about practical things like where Olivia would fit into the daily life of the tribe, what skills she still needed to learn, how they would handle the inevitable challenges that would arise. As they walked back to camp, Olivia felt something she hadn't felt since leaving Eureka: hope. Real hope that this impossible situation might actually work, that she might actually build a life here, that peace between their peoples might be possible. She knew challenges remained. Kiona's hostility wouldn't disappear overnight. Some in the tribe would always see her as an outsider, and the larger conflict between the Modoc and the settlers was far from resolved. But for the first time since taking Catherine Blackwood's place, Olivia believed she had made the right choice. In 3 days, she would marry Wire, would permanently bind herself to the Modoc people and their fate. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. But as she settled into her blankets that night, listening to the sounds of the camp around her, Olivia felt a sense of peace. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, walking the path she was meant to walk. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage and determination. She was no longer just Olivia Weston, trader's niece from Ohio. She was becoming something new, something she didn't yet have a name for, but could feel taking shape within her. And 3 days from now, that transformation would become official and irreversible. The morning of the wedding ceremony arrived with an unseasonable chill that crept through the canyon and left frost glittering on the rocks. Olivia woke to find Michaela and 3 other women waiting outside the lodge, their arms full of ceremonial clothing and their expressions solemn. Today you become Modoc, Michaela announced. Today you leave behind your old name, your old identity. Are you ready for this? Olivia took a deep breath and nodded. I'm ready. The preparation ritual was elaborate and deeply symbolic. The women led her to a secluded pool fed by a hot spring, hidden among the rocks where steam rose in ghostly wisps. They instructed her to remove her clothing and enter the water, and as she did, they began to sing in Modoc, their voices rising and falling in haunting harmonies that echoed off the stone walls. The water was almost uncomfortably hot, and Olivia felt her skin flush as she submerged herself. Michaela approached with a bundle of herbs and began to scrub Olivia's skin with them, the rough texture abrading away dirt and old skin. This washes away your old life, Michaela explained. When you emerge, you will be new, clean, ready to be reborn as one of the people. The other women joined in, washing Olivia's hair with a mixture that smelled of sage and something sweet she couldn't identify. Their hands were not gentle, but neither were they cruel. This was a ritual they took seriously, a transformation they were facilitating with ancient practice and sacred intention. After what felt like an hour, they allowed her to emerge from the pool. They dried her with soft hides and began to dress her in the ceremonial clothing they had brought. The dress was unlike anything Olivia had seen before, made of the softest buckskin she had ever touched and decorated with elaborate beadwork in patterns that told stories she didn't yet know how to read. The colors were rich, deep blues and reds and yellows that seemed to glow in the morning light. "This was my daughter's dress," one of the women said quietly. "She died of the white man's spotted sickness 3 winters ago. She was to marry that spring. The dress has waited for someone worthy to wear it." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm honored. I'll treat it with the respect it deserves." The woman nodded, satisfied. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said the way to peace was through understanding, not violence. My husband called her naive. Perhaps she was, but perhaps she was also wise." They finished dressing Olivia, adding necklaces of shells and stones, bracelets that jangled softly when she moved. And finally, a headdress woven with feathers and decorated with symbols that Michaela explained represented new beginnings and the joining of 2 paths. When they were finished, they led her to a still pool of water so she could see her reflection. The woman looking back at her was almost unrecognizable. She looked Modoc. She looked like she belonged. The ceremony would take place at noon, when the sun was at its highest point, symbolic of the light that would guide their union. Until then, Olivia was required to fast and meditate, to prepare her spirit for the transformation ahead. The women left her alone in a small shelter they had constructed specifically for this purpose, and she sat in the quiet dimness, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She thought about her parents, wondered what they would think of this choice she had made. Her mother had been unconventional, willing to take risks and challenge expectations. Perhaps she would have understood. Her father had been more traditional, more concerned with propriety and what others thought. He might have been horrified, or he might have been proud of her courage. She would never know. She thought about her life in Eureka, the trading post and her Uncle George, and the simple routines of frontier town life. That world seemed impossibly distant now, as if it had been a dream or someone else's life entirely. In just 6 days, she had traveled further than the physical distance between the town and this hidden canyon. She had crossed into a different world with different rules and different values, and she was about to make that crossing permanent and irrevocable. A soft sound at the entrance made her look up. Emma peeked inside, her small face curious and excited. "I'm not supposed to be here," the child whispered, "but I wanted to give you something." She held out a small carved figure, a bird with outstretched wings. "My father made it. He says it's for you, for luck and safe flight into your new life." Olivia accepted the gift with trembling hands. "Thank you, Amma. This means more to me than you know." "Will you really be Modoc now?" the child asked. "Will you be one of us?" "I will try my best," Olivia promised. "Sometimes trying is enough," Amma said with the simple wisdom of children. "My mother says you have a good heart. She says hearts matter more than skin. Your mother is a wise woman." Emma grinned and darted away before anyone could catch her visiting the bride before the ceremony. Olivia held the carved bird carefully, running her fingers over the smooth wood and feeling the love and skill that had gone into its creation. These small gestures of acceptance meant everything, each one a thread in the web of connection she was weaving with these people. At noon, the women returned to escort her to the ceremony site. The entire tribe had gathered in a natural amphitheater formed by the canyon walls, the rock faces rising on 3 sides and creating perfect acoustics for the chanting and singing that would accompany the ritual. Wyatt stood at the center, dressed in his finest clothing, his face painted with ceremonial designs and his long hair decorated with feathers and shells. He looked magnificent and terrifying and utterly foreign, and Olivia felt a moment of pure panic. What was she doing? How could she possibly make this work? Then his eyes met hers across the distance, and she saw something in them that steadied her. Not love, perhaps, but respect and determination, and a shared understanding that they were both taking a leap of faith into unknown territory. She walked forward with her head high, the women flanking her in a protective formation. The shaman who had conducted the funeral rites now stood beside Waya, his weathered face grave as he began to speak. His words were in a formal, archaic version of Modoc that Olivia struggled to follow, but she understood the essence. He spoke of two rivers joining to become one stronger current, of the courage required to bridge divided worlds, of the responsibilities they were accepting not just to each other, but to their communities. He called upon the spirits of earth and sky, fire and water, to witness and bless their union. Then he turned to Olivia and asked in a voice that carried to every listener, "Do you come here freely, without coercion or deception, choosing this path with open eyes and willing heart?" "I do," Olivia replied in Modoc, her voice stronger than she felt. "I come freely and willingly." The shaman nodded and turned to Waya, asking the same question. Waya's response was firm and clear, leaving no room for doubt. The shaman produced a length of braided cord, intricate and beautiful, woven from materials Olivia couldn't identify. He wrapped it around their joined hands, binding them together as he spoke of the ties that would now connect them, ties that could stretch but not break, that could be tested but not severed. "This binding represents your commitment," he intoned. "You are now joined before the people and before the spirits. What you do affects not just yourselves, but your entire community. You carry the hopes of those who seek peace and the fears of those who doubt it can last. Walk carefully, choose wisely, honor each other, and honor the people." Then came the part of the ceremony Mythical had warned her about, but that still took her breath away. The shaman produced a knife, its blade glinting in the noon sun. He made a small cut on Waya's palm, then did the same to Olivia's. The pain was sharp but brief. He pressed their bleeding palms together, and Olivia felt Waya's warm blood mixing with hers. "Your blood joins as your lives join," the shaman declared. "You are now one flesh, one spirit, one destiny. What happens to one happens to both. In joy and in sorrow, in peace and in conflict, you are bound." The tribe began to chant, a rhythmic sound that built in intensity until it seemed to shake the very rocks around them. Olivia felt light-headed, whether from the fasting or the blood loss or the sheer overwhelming nature of the moment, she couldn't tell. Waya's hand tightened on hers, steadying her, and she drew strength from his solid presence. The ceremony continued with exchanges of gifts, symbolic offerings that represented different aspects of their commitment. Waya gave her a bow he had made himself, signifying his promise to provide and protect. She gave him a basket she had woven under Michaela's instruction, representing her willingness to contribute to their household and community. They shared food from the same bowl, drank water from the same vessel, all while the tribe watched and sang. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the shaman unwound the cord from their hands and declared them married by Modoc law and custom. The tribe erupted in celebration, the solemnity of the ceremony giving way to joy and festivity. There would be feasting tonight, dancing and music and storytelling, a rare moment of happiness in a time marked by so much hardship and loss. Waya led Olivia through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes from those who approached. Some faces were genuinely happy, others merely polite, and a few, including Kiona's, were openly hostile. But the deed was done. Olivia was now officially Waya's wife, a member of the Modoc tribe, and her old identity as a white settler's niece was supposed to be left behind. As evening fell and the celebration began in earnest, Olivia found herself swept up in the festivities despite her exhaustion. The food was abundant, far more than she had seen since arriving in the camp. There was venison and rabbit, fish from the streams, roots and tubers prepared in ways that made them delicious. and something sweet made from berries and honey that tasted like heaven. People ate and laughed and told stories, and for a few hours the weight of their circumstances seemed to lift. Children ran wild, playing games and stealing extra sweets when their mothers weren't watching. Elders sat in places of honor, nodding approval at the young people dancing to the beat of drums that echoed off the canyon walls. Waya stayed close to Olivia's side, introducing her to people she hadn't yet met and translating when conversations moved too quickly for her to follow. His presence was protective but not possessive, and she appreciated the subtle way he ensured she was included without making her feel like a prize he was showing off. As the celebration continued into the night, Mythical appeared and gestured for Olivia to follow her. "It is time," the old woman said. "Time for you to retire to your lodge. The marriage must be consummated for it to be valid by our law." Olivia's stomach clenched with sudden nervousness. "But Waya said he wouldn't force me, that I could choose when I was ready." "And he spoke truth," Mythical assured her. "But you must at least spend the night together in the lodge. What happens between you is your business. But the tribe expects you to retire together. This is our way." Olivia nodded, understanding. Mythical led her back to Waya's lodge, which had been transformed in her absence. Fresh furs covered the sleeping area, and someone had hung beautiful woven decorations from the support poles. The fire pit was prepared with wood ready to light, and there were baskets of food and water placed conveniently nearby. Everything had been done to make the space welcoming for a new bride. "Sit here," Mythical instructed, positioning Olivia on the furs. "Waya will come soon." Then she paused, her stern expression softening slightly. "You did well today. You honored our traditions and showed respect for our ways. Some of the women who doubted you have changed their minds. Not all, but some. This is progress." "Thank you," Olivia said sincerely, "for everything, for teaching me, for defending me, for helping me find my way here." Mythical waved away the gratitude, uncomfortable as always with sentiment. "You work hard, you try. This is all we can ask." She turned to leave, then looked back. "Waya is good man. He will be patient with you. Do not fear him." With that cryptic reassurance, she left. Olivia sat alone in the lodge, listening to the celebration continuing outside and trying to calm her racing heart. She had known this moment was coming, had accepted it as part of the bargain she made. But knowing and experiencing were very different things. Waya entered perhaps 20 minutes later, ducking through the lodge entrance and letting the flap fall closed behind him. He had removed his ceremonial paint and some of the elaborate decorations, but he still wore his finest clothing. He stood for a moment, seeming almost as uncertain as Olivia felt. "We are married now," he said finally. "By my people's law, you are my wife. By my own choice, I am your husband." Olivia nodded. "I understand." Waya moved to the fire pit and lit the prepared wood, coaxing it into a small blaze that filled the lodge with warm light. Then he sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I meant what I said before. I will not force myself on you. We have time to learn each other, to build trust. Our marriage is real in the eyes of the tribe, but what happens in the privacy of this lodge is between us alone." Relief washed through Olivia, followed immediately by gratitude. "Thank you. I know this arrangement wasn't your choice, and I appreciate your patience with me. It was not my choice initially," Waya agreed, "but I am not unhappy with how it has turned out. You have proven yourself to be strong and honorable. These are qualities I value more than beauty or skill with women's work, though you are learning those as well." He paused, then added with something that might have been amusement, "And you are not unpleasant to look at, even with your strange pale skin and dawn-colored hair." Olivia felt herself blush. "You're not what I expected either. I thought you would be harsh and cruel, but you've been kind in your own way." Waya considered this. "Warriors must be harsh and cruel to enemies, but you are not my enemy. You are my wife. This requires different behavior." They talked long into the night, the celebration outside gradually quieting as people retired to their own lodges. They spoke of practical things, how they would manage their household, what would be expected of Olivia in her new role, how they would navigate the complexities of their unusual situation. But they also spoke of deeper things, their hopes and fears, their memories of those they had lost, their dreams for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. "I want children someday," Wire said at one point. "Sons and daughters to carry on our ways, to ensure our people survive even as the world changes around us. But I understand if you are not ready for this. We have time." "I want that too," Olivia admitted. "Not immediately, but someday. I want to help ensure your people's survival, to contribute something meaningful. That's why I came here. That's why I chose this." Wire studied her face in the firelight. "You really mean that? You truly want to be part of the people, not just to endure captivity or fulfill an obligation." "I do," Olivia said firmly. "I know I'm still learning, still making mistakes, but I'm committed to this path, to building a bridge between our worlds. I believe peace is possible, Wire. I believe understanding is possible, even after everything you've seen, after Standing Elk's death and the hostility you've faced." "Especially after that," Olivia replied. "Because I've also seen kindness and acceptance. I've seen people willing to give me a chance despite their fears. I've seen the humanity in your people that so many settlers refuse to acknowledge. This is worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for." Wire reached across the space between them and took her hand, careful of the cut on her palm that was now bandaged. "You are remarkable, Olivia Weston. I did not expect to feel fortunate in this arrangement, but I find that I do." They eventually lay down to sleep, Wire on one side of the lodge and Olivia on the other, maintaining the respectful distance he had promised. But as Olivia drifted toward sleep, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected. This was her life now. This was her choice. And despite all the challenges and uncertainties, it felt right. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning, Olivia woke to find Wire already gone, likely attending to his duties as war chief. She dressed quickly and emerged from the lodge to find the camp returning to its normal routines after the celebration. Women were already at work, children were playing, and warriors were preparing for a hunting expedition. Michaela appeared almost immediately, a knowing look on her weathered face. "You survived the wedding night," she observed dryly. "This is good." Olivia felt herself blush again, but met the old woman's eyes steadily. "Wire was honorable. He gave me time." Michaela nodded approvingly. "Good. Now you work. Being wife does not excuse you from obligations. Come today you learn to tan hides properly. Your first attempts were terrible." The bluntness made Olivia smile despite herself. She followed Michaela to the work area, where several women were already engaged in the laborious process of preparing animal hides for use. They looked up when Olivia approached, and she braced herself for hostility. But instead, several of them smiled and called out greetings. "You are one of us now," one woman said. "Whiteflower no more. You need proper name." Michaela considered this. "She came to us in autumn, during the season of falling leaves. She showed courage to take another woman's place. She learns our ways. This deserves recognition." The women discussed among themselves, suggesting various names and debating their appropriateness. Finally, Michaela raised her hand for silence. "We will call her Autumn Courage, for the season she came and for the bravery she showed. This is fitting." The other women nodded agreement, and Olivia felt tears threaten again. She had a new name, a Modoc name, recognition of her place in the tribe. It was a gift beyond measure. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I will try to live up to this name." "You already have," Michaela said gruffly. "Now stop crying and start working. These hides will not tan themselves." Olivia threw herself into the work with renewed determination. She was Autumn Courage now, wife of the war chief, member of the Modoc tribe. Her old life was truly behind her. Her new life, with all its challenges and possibilities, stretched before her. And for the first time since leaving Eureka, she felt truly hopeful about the future. 2 months had passed since the wedding ceremony, and the first snows of winter had begun to blanket the volcanic landscape in pristine white. Olivia, now known throughout the camp as Autumn Courage, had settled into the rhythms of Modoc life with a determination that had won over even some of her harshest critics. She could now tan hides with competence, if not mastery. Her language skills had improved dramatically through constant immersion, and she had earned a reputation as someone willing to tackle any task without complaint. The marriage to Waya had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated, a partnership built on mutual respect and growing affection that surprised them both. They had not yet consummated their union, but the distance between them had gradually closed as trust developed. They shared meals and conversation, worked together on projects for the camp, and had begun to develop the kind of easy companionship that comes from truly knowing another person. The fragile peace that the marriage was supposed to ensure, however, was showing dangerous cracks. Reports came regularly from scouts about increased army presence in the region, about settlers pushing ever closer to Modoc territory, about skirmishes and raids that threatened to explode into full-scale war. The tribal council met frequently to debate their options, and the divisions within the community were becoming more pronounced. Some, led by Nanook and other elder warriors, argued for abandoning the peace arrangement and returning to active resistance. They pointed to the deaths of Standing Elk and Swift River as proof that settlers would never honor treaties or show mercy. Others, including Chief Quana and Waya, insisted that continued resistance would only lead to the complete destruction of their people. The arguments grew heated, voices raised in anger and frustration as winter closed in and options seemed to dwindle. Olivia attended these councils now, sitting beside Waya in her role as his wife, and she listened with growing concern as the debate raged. One evening, after a particularly contentious meeting where Nanook had openly questioned whether Waya's judgment was compromised by his white wife, Olivia and Waya walked together through the snow-covered camp in troubled silence. Finally, Olivia spoke. "They're right to question whether I'm influencing you. Maybe I am. Maybe my presence here is making it harder for you to lead effectively." Waya stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression fierce in the moonlight. "You give those old fools too much credit. My decisions are my own, made for the good of our people, not to please my wife. The fact that you often agree with my reasoning does not mean you control me." "But they don't see it that way," Olivia pressed. "They see a war chief who married a white woman and suddenly became reluctant to fight." "The optics are terrible." Waya's jaw tightened. "I became reluctant to fight when I realized we cannot win. When I understood that every battle we win is temporary, while every loss is permanent. We lose warriors we cannot replace, women and children who are the future of our people. The whites lose soldiers, but send more the next month. This is mathematics, not sentiment. Your presence here has not changed my strategic thinking. It has simply given me hope that there might be another path forward." "What kind of path?" Olivia asked quietly. "What future do you see for the Modoc?" Waya was silent for a long moment, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. "I see a future where we adapt without surrendering who we are, where we learn to navigate the white man's world while preserving our traditions and values, where our children grow up bilingual and bicultural, able to move between worlds as you are learning to do. Is this surrender, perhaps? But it is also survival, and survival is victory when the alternative is extinction." Before Olivia could respond, a commotion erupted at the canyon entrance. Warriors were shouting, and people were emerging from their lodges to see what was happening. Waya immediately moved toward the disturbance, Olivia following close behind. A small group of riders was approaching through the snow, and as they drew closer, Olivia's heart stopped. She recognized one of them. It was Colonel Rutherford, accompanied by 4 soldiers, and, to her shock, her Uncle George. The colonel raised his hand in a gesture of peace as they approached, but the Modoc warriors had already nocked arrows and leveled rifles, ready to defend their camp. Waya stepped forward, his authority evident in every line of his body. "You come to our home uninvited and armed. Give me one reason why I should not kill you where you stand." "We come under flag of truce," Rutherford called out, gesturing to a white cloth one of his men carried. "We have a message from the territorial governor and a proposal that might interest you." Waya's eyes narrowed. "The last proposal from white authorities ended with 2 of my warriors dead. Why should I trust anything you say?" Because the alternative is war that neither of us can afford, Rutherford replied. And because we bring someone who can vouch for our intentions. He gestured toward George Weston, who dismounted carefully, his eyes searching the crowd until they found Olivia. "Livy," he called out, his voice breaking with emotion. "Thank God you're alive. We heard rumors, but didn't know if they were true." "Uncle George," Olivia said, stepping forward despite Wyer's warning hand on her arm. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see if you were safe, to see if there was any way to bring you home." George moved toward her but stopped when several warriors shifted threateningly. "Please, Livy, come back with us. Whatever you think you're doing here, it's not worth sacrificing your life for." "I'm not sacrificing anything," Olivia said clearly, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm exactly where I choose to be. I'm married to Wyer. I'm part of this community. This is my home now." George's face crumpled with confusion and distress. "Married, Livy? You can't be serious. These people kidnapped you, forced you into this. We can get you out. The army will protect you." "Nobody kidnapped me," Olivia corrected firmly. "I came here of my own free will to prevent a war. I stayed because I found something worth staying for. I'm not leaving, Uncle George. Not now, not ever." "No family reunion," Wyer interrupted coldly. "You said you had a proposal. Speak it or leave." Rutherford cleared his throat. "The territorial governor is prepared to offer the Modoc people a compromise. A designated reservation within your traditional territory, supplied with food and tools to help you transition to farming. Protection from hostile settlers. Recognition of your rights to hunt and fish in certain areas. In exchange, you agree to cease all raids and to accept oversight from a government agent." The offer was met with angry muttering from the assembled Modoc. Nanook spat on the ground. "More lies, more false promises. We have heard these words before, and they always end the same way, with our people starving on worthless land while whites take everything of value." Rutherford held up his hand. "I know trust is difficult, but the governor is willing to put this in writing, to make it a formal treaty. And he's willing to allow an intermediary to help negotiate the terms, someone both sides can trust." He looked directly at Olivia. "Someone like your wife, Wyer, someone who understands both worlds." The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. Olivia felt every eye turn toward her, measuring, judging, wondering. Wyer's face was unreadable, but she could sense the tension in his body. Finally he spoke. "We will discuss this in council. You will camp outside the canyon tonight. Tomorrow we will give you our answer." "Not acceptable." Rutherford started to protest, but Wyer cut him off. "You come to our home and make demands. You are lucky I do not kill you for your arrogance. You will wait, or you will leave, but you will not dictate terms here." Rutherford clearly wanted to argue, but recognized the precariousness of his position. He nodded stiffly. "We'll camp outside, but we need an answer by tomorrow. The army won't wait forever." After the soldiers withdrew, the tribal council convened immediately. The debate was fierce and immediate, with opinions sharply divided. Some saw the proposal as a potential path to survival, while others viewed it as just another trick to pacify the Modoc before destroying them. Nanook was particularly vehement in his opposition. "This is a trap. They offer us nothing we do not already have, and ask us to surrender our freedom in exchange. And they want to use his white wife as their tool to manipulate us from within." Wyer's voice was dangerously quiet. "Watch your words, Nanook. Autumn Courage has proven her loyalty to our people many times over. She is not a tool of the whites." "But she is white," Nanook shot back. "And now her people come offering to make her an intermediary, to put her in a position of power between us and them. Can you not see how convenient this is? How perfectly it serves their purposes?" Olivia had remained silent throughout the debate, but now she stood. "May I speak?" Wyer nodded, though several council members looked displeased at a woman, especially a white woman, addressing them. "I understand your suspicion," Olivia said in Modoc, her accent still present, but her grammar now solid. "I would be suspicious too in your position. But consider this. The army is coming whether you accept this proposal or not. Colonel Rutherford's presence here proves they know the location of this camp. They're offering terms now, but if you refuse, they'll come with overwhelming force. She paused, gathering her courage. I don't trust the government any more than you do. I've seen how they treat treaties like paper to be thrown away when convenient. But I also know that some individual soldiers and officials genuinely want peace, want to find a solution that doesn't involve massacre. If I can help negotiate terms that actually protect your people, isn't it worth trying? You speak of protection as if whites have ever protected anyone but themselves, an elder woman said bitterly. My sister's children died on the Klamath Reservation that was supposed to protect us, starved because the supplies promised never came. Why should this time be different? Because this time you'll have someone watching, someone who cares what happens to you, Olivia replied. I'm not naive enough to think I can change the whole system, but maybe I can ensure that promises made are actually kept, that supplies arrive, that boundaries are respected, that your voices are heard in negotiations instead of being dictated to. The council debated late into the night, voices rising and falling as different perspectives clashed. Finally, Chief Quana called for a vote. It was close, closer than Wire had hoped, but the majority agreed to hear the full proposal and to allow Olivia to serve as intermediary if acceptable terms could be negotiated. Nanook and his faction voted against it, their opposition noted and their warnings recorded for history. The next morning, Wire and Olivia met with Colonel Rutherford and George Weston outside the canyon. The negotiations were tense and difficult, with every detail examined and debated. Olivia found herself translating not just words, but intentions, trying to bridge the vast gulf of misunderstanding between the two sides. She pushed back hard on terms that seemed designed to control rather than protect, insisting on specifics rather than vague promises. Where exactly would this reservation be? What specific resources would be provided, and on what schedule? Who would oversee the government agent to ensure fairness? What recourse would the Modoc have if terms were violated? Rutherford seemed surprised by her detailed questioning, perhaps expecting her to rubber stamp whatever the army proposed. But Olivia had learned too much in her months with the Modoc to accept anything at face value. She knew how easily promises could evaporate, how quickly goodwill could turn to betrayal. After hours of negotiation, they had hammered out a preliminary agreement that Wire could take back to his people. It wasn't perfect, but it included some real protections and specific commitments that could be enforced. As the meeting concluded, George pulled Olivia aside. Livy, I need to understand. Are you really happy here? Is this truly what you want? Olivia looked at her uncle, seeing the genuine concern and confusion in his eyes. I know this doesn't make sense to you, Uncle George. It wouldn't have made sense to me either before I came here. But yes, I'm happy. I've found purpose and meaning I never had in Eureka. I found people who value me for my contributions, not just my utility. And I've found, she paused, searching for the right words, I've found a place where I belong. George shook his head wonderingly. You've changed so much. You're not the same girl who left town 2 months ago. No, Olivia agreed with a slight smile. I'm not. That girl was lost and searching for something she couldn't name. I found it here. I found myself. George reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. Your parents would be proud of you. I hope. Maybe a little terrified but proud. Take care of yourself, Livy, and know that if you ever need help, ever want to come back, I'll be waiting. Thank you, Uncle George. That means more than you know. After the soldiers departed, Olivia and Wire returned to camp to present the negotiated terms to the council. The debate resumed immediately, but this time it was more focused, more practical. They discussed specific provisions, weighed risks and benefits, considered alternatives. Finally, after another long night of discussion, the council voted to accept the agreement provisionally, with the understanding that Olivia would monitor its implementation and report any violations. It was a tentative step toward peace, fragile and uncertain, but it was a step nonetheless. That night, alone in their lodge, Wire pulled Olivia into his arms for the first time since their wedding. She went willingly, surprised by how natural it felt. "You were magnificent today," he said quietly. "The way you questioned every clause, refused to accept vague promises, insisted on accountability. You fought for my people as fiercely as any warrior." "I'm one of your people now," Olivia reminded him. "Their well-being is my well-being. Their future is my future." Wire pulled back slightly to look at her face. "I have tried to be patient, to give you time to adjust and feel safe here. But I must know, are you ready for our marriage to become real in all ways? Are you ready to truly be my wife?" Olivia met his eyes, seeing in them desire but also respect, want but also willingness to wait longer if needed. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the transformation she had undergone, the person she had become. "Yes," she said softly, "I'm ready. I'm yours, Wire, completely and willingly." What happened next was tender and passionate, an affirmation of the bond they had been building over months of shared challenges and growing trust. Afterward, lying in Wire's arms with the fire burning low and contentment settling over her like a warm blanket, Olivia felt a completeness she had never experienced before. This was where she belonged. This was home. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white silence. The future remained uncertain, the peace still fragile, the challenges still enormous. But for this moment, in this place, Olivia was exactly who she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. She was Autumn Courage, wife of the war chief, bridge between worlds, and she would face whatever came next with the strength and determination that had brought her this far. The path ahead would not be easy, but she would walk it with courage and hope, believing that understanding and peace were possible even in the most unlikely circumstances. Spring arrived with a violence that matched the turbulence of the past months. The carefully negotiated peace had lasted barely 3 weeks before settlers, emboldened by rumors of Modoc's submission, violated the agreed boundaries and attacked a hunting party. 2 Modoc warriors were killed, and the fragile trust that Olivia had worked so hard to build shattered like ice under a hammer. The tribal council erupted in fury, with Nanak demanding immediate retaliation and calling for Olivia's exile or worse. She had promised accountability, promised that violations would be punished, but the government agent responsible for enforcement had done nothing. Wire found himself trapped between his loyalty to his wife and his responsibility to his people, and for the first time since their marriage, genuine tension crackled between them. "I believed you," Wire said one night, his voice heavy with betrayal. "I believed that your people could be trusted if we gave them a chance, that your presence here meant something, but nothing has changed. They kill us with impunity while we are expected to submit peacefully. How can I defend this to my warriors? How can I defend you?" Olivia felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I never promised my people would be perfect. I promised I would fight for accountability, and I am. I've sent 3 letters to the territorial governor demanding action against the settlers who violated the treaty. I've requested that Colonel Rutherford investigate and prosecute." "Letters," Wire said bitterly. "Words on paper while my people bleed." Perhaps Nanook was right. Perhaps this was all an elaborate trick to pacify us before the final blow. Perhaps I was a fool to believe that a white woman could ever truly be one of us. The words struck Olivia like a physical blow. After everything she had sacrificed, everything she had endured and overcome, to have Wire question her loyalty was almost unbearable. But she understood his anger, understood the impossible position he was in. "I know you're hurt and angry," she said quietly. "I know my people have failed you again. But I haven't failed you, Wire. I haven't stopped fighting for justice, for the terms we agreed to. If you want me to leave, I will. But don't question whether I belong here. Don't question where my loyalties lie. I am Modoc now. I am your wife. And I will fight for this people until my last breath, whether you believe that or not." Wire stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the conflict raging behind his eyes, love and anger, trust and betrayal, hope and despair all warring for dominance. Finally his shoulders sagged and he pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry. You have earned the right to be trusted. My anger at your people should not fall on you. Forgive me. The crisis came to a head 2 days later when word arrived that the army was preparing a massive assault on the Modoc stronghold. Convinced that the tribe was planning revenge attacks for the treaty violations, Olivia knew with terrible certainty that this would be a massacre, that the army would show no mercy to a people they considered irredeemably hostile. She made a decision that would define the rest of her life. Without telling Waya or asking permission from the council, she rode alone through dangerous territory back to Eureka. It took her a full day of hard riding, and when she arrived, exhausted and determined, she went straight to the telegraph office. She sent messages to every newspaper in California, to politicians she knew her uncle had connections with, to anyone who might listen. She told the truth about the treaty violations, about the unprovoked attacks on Modoc hunters, about the impending massacre of innocent people. She used her position as a white woman, married to the war chief, to give credibility to her account, knowing it would make her a traitor in the eyes of many settlers, but not caring. The response was swift and unexpected. A journalist from San Francisco arrived within 3 days, eager for the story of the white woman who had gone native and was now defending her adopted people. Olivia gave him everything, held nothing back, and painted a picture of a people fighting desperately for survival against impossible odds. The article, when it published, caused a sensation. Suddenly the Modoc situation was national news, and the territorial governor found himself under intense pressure to honor the treaty terms and punish those who had violated them. The planned army assault was quietly cancelled, and 3 settlers were arrested and charged with murder. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was more accountability than the Modoc had ever received before. When Olivia returned to the canyon, she expected anger at her unauthorized departure. Instead, she found Waya waiting for her with an expression she couldn't read. "You risked everything," he said quietly. "Rode alone through hostile territory, made yourself a target for every settler who now sees you as a traitor to your race." "Why? Because this is my people now," Olivia replied simply. "Because I meant every word I said in that wedding ceremony. Because some things are worth any risk." Waya pulled her close, and she felt him trembling. "The council has voted to give the peace one more chance because of what you did. Nanook still opposes it, but even he cannot deny that you have proven your loyalty beyond any doubt. You have saved lives, Autumn Courage. Modoc lives. This will not be forgotten. The months that followed were not easy. Trust had to be rebuilt on both sides, and there were setbacks and challenges at every turn. But slowly, painfully, the peace held. Olivia worked tirelessly as intermediary, traveling between the Modoc camp and settler communities, translating not just language, but culture and intention. She became a fixture in both worlds, never fully accepted by either, but respected by both for her dedication and honesty. A year after the wedding ceremony, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure, and when she told Waya, she saw the same emotions reflected in his face. "Our child will be a bridge," he said wonderingly, his hand on her still flat belly. "Neither fully Modoc nor fully white, but something new, something that represents the future we are trying to build." The future arrived on a cold November morning when Olivia gave birth to a daughter with her mother's green eyes and her father's black hair. They named her Dawn, after the child who had first welcomed Olivia to the camp, and her birth was celebrated by the entire tribe. Even Nanook, who had never fully accepted Olivia, softened when he held the baby and saw in her tiny face the promise of continuity and survival. As Olivia stood on the overlook, where Waya had first brought her on that first night so long ago, her daughter sleeping peacefully in a cradleboard on her back, she reflected on the impossible journey that had brought her here. She had been someone else when she arrived, a settler's niece playing at courage and idealism. But through trial and sacrifice, through love and loss, and the daily work of building bridges between hostile worlds, she had become something more. She was Autumn Courage, mother and wife, warrior in her own way, fighting not with weapons but with words and determination, and an unshakable belief that peace was possible. The path ahead remained uncertain. There would be more challenges, more setbacks, more moments when everything seemed on the verge of collapse. But Olivia was no longer the girl who had taken Catherine Blackwood's place at that dawn exchange. She was a woman who had found her purpose, her people, and her place in a world that insisted such things were impossible. And as the sun set over the volcanic landscape she had come to love, casting everything in shades of gold and crimson, Olivia smiled. She was not the girl they were sent for. She was so much more. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.